All right, so this right here is a prime example why just because someone played in the NBA, I do not listen to them just from face value. Just because you played in the NBA does not mean you have a good take. You can have a bad take just like the rest of us.
I want some nasty. Are we having fun yet?
All right, so I came across this clip and it is just it's awful, man. So your boy Tracy McGrady has something to say about Tim Duncan and the San Antonio Spurs, and it is just a terrible take, and it just comes down to absolute bias on his end. And this is just one of those reasons, man, where I just do not listen to someone just because they played in the NBA. We get so many people, whether it be Gilbert Arenas, Steven Jackson, and now apparently Tracy McGrady, that says things that's just completely out of bounds. No clue what he's talking about. So let's go ahead and listen to what he had to say about Tim Duncan and the Spurs. Oh my God, no one can hear that.
Be MVP. Now it's always be. Thought it was as a player, if you're the baddest guy in the league, you should be MVP. Now it's his team is in first, his team is in fourth.
I don't like that because that's not a real MVP to me.
Thank you.
But when you look at a guy that I'll say is putting up crazy numbers, doesn't really have the talent like some of these elite teams have, and he gets his team into the playoffs, whether it's a 7th or 8th seed, that's an MVP to me, because if you take him off of that, they don't make the playoffs. I had a year like that, my 2003 year. I'm not playing with no other All-Stars. I think we got to the 6th seed, and I'm averaging 32 points. You take me off of that team, we're a lottery team.
Who won the MVP that year?
Tim Duncan got it that year. And you take him off of the Spurs, they still make the playoffs.
Whoa.
They make the playoffs. Yes, they do.
No, they don't.
Yes, they do.
No, they don't, because a lot of those guys got their success off of him.
Bruh.
Yeah, he got double. He kicking out Ginobili. No.
They have a well-oiled machine.
Yeah, Tim Duncan.
I'm saying, without Tim Duncan, they still are a playoff team.
No, they win game, but they don't make the playoffs.
He is absolutely right, by the way. Shaq is absolutely right. All right, so a lot of people talk about Tim Duncan and whether or not he's the greatest ever. I mean, there's people actually saying is Anthony Davis better than Tim Duncan as far as a power forward? And there's some arguments that could Giannis become the best forward ever, in front of Duncan. Look, I don't know about all that, but I will say this, okay? Tim Duncan, if you want to take away all his championships, people might say the 99 championship was one in which, he had a lot of veterans on that team and that was a short season. And, Phil Jackson, he continuously complains about it, right? All right, fine, take that one away. And some people might take away the 05, 07. Well, you got, prime Ginobili and Tony. And 2014, he had a lot of help. He had Kawhi Leonard. If you want to take away all of those, okay, the real reason why Tim Duncan is one of the greatest power forwards of all time, or if not, he is the greatest power forward of all time. Just take 2003 alone, okay? Now, don't get me wrong, all right? Obviously, throughout his whole career, he's been amazing. The consistency, even though as he gotten older, he could still dominate guys like Boogie Cousins and other young guys that were coming into the league. He was always great, okay? He was always all-time great to me. But if you just took 2003 alone, no one, and I mean no one, has carried a team the way that Tim Duncan carried the 03 Spurs. No one. It was absolutely ridiculous. And Shaq is right. Tracy, I think he has a huge bias here because he didn't win it. But Tim Duncan, they do not make the playoffs. The Spurs do not make the playoffs. It was the well-oiled machine was Duncan. Point blank, period. It was Duncan. It was nothing else. It was Duncan. That's it. It was Duncan. So I don't know. I don't know what Tracy McGrady was watching back then. I know he was playing during that time, so maybe he didn't have a lot of focus on the Spurs. I have no idea. Very strange, but he's absolutely wrong here, and that's just his bias talking. Now, with that being said, I did want to at least show some of the stats in the playoffs just to kind of emphasize it. But before we do that, I know Spurs culture has something here that I thought was really good. So this is on Twitter. Shaq will remember how dominant Tim Duncan was in 03 because he stopped the Lakers from winning their 4th straight championship. People think that Tim Duncan had all this help in 03, which is not true. He led the Spurs to the best record in the NBA with guys who were past their primes, not even close to their primes, or never had a prime. Tony Parker was 20-year-old sophomore in 03 and was the Spurs' second best player. This wasn't prime Parker. Definitely wasn't, right? Monty Ginobili was a rookie, averaging 7.6 points per game. David Robinson was 37 years old and was on his last legs. He averaged 8 points and 8 rebounds. 40-year-old Kevin Willis averaged 4.2 points per game. 37-year-old Steve Kerr was on the team too and averaged 4 points per game. 37-year-old Danny Ferry averaged 1.9 points per game. 33-year-old Steve Smith averaged 6.8 points per game, both of which their field goal percentage was terrible. And Devin Brown, a rookie, averaged 1.7 points per game. And I think it's really funny he didn't mention one person in particular. But if you look at the playoff stats, dude, come on, dude. Tim Duncan is nearly averaging 25 points per game in the playoffs. And the closest player to him is Parker, who's averaging 15. That's insane. And then you got Steven Jackson at 12.8, which I don't know why he dogs Parker so much when he wasn't even averaging as many points. It's very strange. Very strange man. He needs to stop being so bitter. And then you got Manu 9.4, Rose 9.3, Davis Robinson last leg, like he said. Now, this is what's absolutely incredible. He dominated, okay? Now, don't get me wrong, okay? If the playoffs, look at these numbers, all right? He had the most defensive rebounds, most total rebounds, most assists, most blocks, most points. I mean, just absolutely killing it, right? And then as far as turnovers, close to Steven Jackson's, which is funny. All right, so here it is. So look at this. So he dominated in the finals. These stats are unheard of, okay? 24 points per game, 17 rebounds per game. 17 rebounds per game he averaged. 24 points, 17 rebounds, 5 assists, 5 blocks, and a steal. That is absolutely ridiculous, okay? So a lot of people, I don't know why they have this misconception with Tim Duncan. I think it's just, you think about the Spurs and what they became and the overall like lore of the Spurs, and you're like, yeah, he always had help. Like it was always the big three. That is not true whatsoever. 03 was absolutely ridiculous from Duncan. He was a monster. You take that season alone all the way to a championship. I'm telling you, Tim Duncan, you will sit back and you will question, is Tim Duncan the greatest player of all time? Not just power forward, is he the greatest player of all time? Because I don't know if anyone has carried a team the way that Duncan carried the 03 Spurs. It was a carry job like no other, okay? Now, don't get me wrong, as years went by, obviously the big three, and it wasn't just Duncan, but he was undoubtedly the leader of the team all the way through. So I just want to bring that up because I hate that sometimes, like, guys that played, they get so much airtime and stuff like that, and people listen to what they have to say. Tracy McGrady is just absolutely wrong here, and I'm happy that Shaq corrected him there, because that's just wrong. So anyways, I'll give it to you guys later. If you want to support the channel, clanthemerchfan.com, or become a Patreon YouTube member, only $2 a month. Until next time, bye.